It's more than just EVs too that will change as the market changes. It'll be less fuel for things that need fuel. So I just hope I can still have my motorcycle, and I know the car people out there are going to still want to run their old cars for sure.
Well, I like to fish, and I don't see any electric boats yet, but just because you see the countdown. Hey, everybody. I got to start it out right this time because last episode I noticed I didn't say welcome to the Make Trades Great Again podcast right away. I know I say that every single time, and everybody is already listening to the podcast, but I'd like to welcome them. And I'd also welcome our guest, Andy, our very special, nice, handsome, smart, tall, all these things. He is Jason Norman, or he goes by HVAC Jay on the gram. Jay,
good morning, guys.
Thank you for joining us.
Thank you very much for having me. How you guys doing?
Doing good. I'm doing well. I'm a little tired this morning. I don't know. I'm a little laggy, so I'm gonna defer to you to get us started. We had recently talked about EV vehicles, specifically cargo vans for the use of like service fleets. And Andy and I are, I can speak for Andy in this case. We're fascinated by this whole idea, and Denver kind of spurred this conversation. Denver Baker, MD Heat. And it's got us thinking like 100 different ways since Sunday about how the heck this might or might not work. I'm convinced it would work. I think that there's a lot of opportunity. But you sent Andy an email. You shared a whole bunch of cool information. I'm going to hand it over to you because I want you to kind of get started and give everybody listening and watching an idea about what it was you were talking about your email.
Yeah, so I sent a long-winded email to a very long-winded email address.
The Make Trades Great Again pod at gmail.com.
That's the one. There you go. Yeah, I don't know. There's it really intrigued me hearing you guys talk about EV vehicles and stuff like that. Where I live, I don't know, it doesn't work really well, in my opinion. I've gone on some trips on an EV vehicle where we did. Well, actually, we need to stop. Hold on a second here. We need to figure out some terms here because I'm kilometers and you guys are miles.
That's okay.
So,
that's okay.
K's and M's.
So there's 160 kilometers and 100 miles, something like that. So I drove in an EV vehicle last summer. We did a trip with the boys up to Kelowna. That was like 260 kilometers. I'm sure we can do the math on that one. But
260, you said?
Yeah.
I'm looking it up right now. It's 161 and a half miles.
So that's also through mountains and stuff like that too. So that's obviously you're not gonna have the full range of it. We had to stop for charging, I think 3 times or whatever, and that was fine. It was actually a fun little trip, very different from what I'm used to, where you just fuel up at home and you just ride straight there. And I think that's the biggest change with EV is that we're gonna have to change our driving habits like 100%.
I think you're right. That's changing all the time, not daily or anything like that, but more charging stations are coming online all the time. I mean, it's a fact. And so far, I'd like to start the conversation out too, real quick. I would like to remind everybody, we're not talking about, we're not pushing any kind of agenda here, whatsoever. We're literally talking about this because it's an interesting conversation. It's going to affect every one of us in a real way at some point in time.
Right.
So,
well, and at the moment, Jay, you guys are getting, what'd you say, 2020 or 2035 is your no new vehicles date?
Yeah.
I mean, that's not far away.
No, it's really not. It's one vehicle.
You look at the longevity of that.
It's one vehicle life cycle away.
Yeah, it's kind of one life cycle away. Yeah.
That's what I was just gonna. I was just gonna say. I was looking at a chart earlier that was saying that the average lifespan of a vehicle is 12 years.
Yeah, that was one of the things I put in the email there is that, like, for Canada, they're kind of federally mandating across all the provinces that come 2035, there'll be no more new vehicle sales that are strictly, like, combustion engine. It'll have to be electric vehicle or hydrogen, or I believe even hybrid qualifies so long as the hybrid electrical part of it is over, like, 80 kilometers or 100-kilometer range or something like that.
Has it meet a benchmark for the minimum on
the minimum standard, yeah.
Is that specifically spell out, or does it does it at all indicate whether it's commercial or domestic, like personal use vehicles?
Well,
Say
I was
anything
doing some
about
investigative
fleet
journalism
vehicles?
last night, and I was looking for that
Nice.
answer. I couldn't
Nice.
specifically find that answer. It did talk about, like, I did find some verbiage that leads me to believe that it may not include, like, all vehicles, so, like, big trucks and stuff like that, and commercial vehicles. But, like, where do they draw the line of commercial vehicles? Like, we are all used to driving 3/4 ton vans, right? Is that going to be considered a commercial vehicle at that point? Because there's definitely non-commercial like builds for those vehicles that you could consider would be for
Whoa.
personal use, right?
I sure as hell hope it does, though, because in the state of Minnesota, I'm licensed and I have to follow like specific rules that I wouldn't, because I'm a
Yeah.
commercial vehicle. My name is on the side of it. I'm driving it for a business purpose.
Mm-hmm.
If I tow a trailer and immediately my vehicle GVW goes over 10,000 pounds, I have to go through weigh stations and everything like that. Like immediately, just because I'm driving it for my business. So they should at least follow like the same kind of guidelines, I would imagine.
Yeah, I would imagine. I'm not sure exactly where they draw the line, but like I imagine inevitably wherever they draw the line today, it'll be different tomorrow. So I totally no, like seriously, like I foresee
Yeah.
myself driving a service van that's probably going to be an EV before I retire anyway.
It's interesting though. You look at that and you say, well, what kind of industries would have like significant impact if you said all vehicles, right? All commercial vehicles. You look at somebody like an electric utility or something of that nature that has 100 bucket trucks, big bucket trucks on the road, and you go, well, how do they? I mean, granted, they're the utility. They show up to go to work and just plug into a pole somewhere. I mean, whatever. But it'd be like in India where the guy's got the piece of rebar and he's like bending wires around the prongs to get his power.
He's using a fork. I like the
Or
one where
fork.
they use two pieces of silverware and wire.
Yeah.
No, it's interesting, Jay. In your email, you had and you started the conversation about like you went on this trip and you had to stop along the way. In your email, you said I think it's a pretty solid point to make. Like are we gonna have to, or we're probably going to have to change our driving habits, right?
For
But
sure.
what does that mean, like when it comes to a fleet? Because I've said in conversation with you and Andy and in our past episode, like there's going to be a point in which like companies are going to have to figure it out. You're going to either have to have the space at your own property to do like depot charging. When I say depot, that's what the industry apparently uses that term, where you can, you build a bank of chargers. That's depot charging, I guess. So I'm just going to call it that.
Mm-hmm.
Or like I said, I could drop a bomb in this episode right now and tell everybody listening that there's a huge opportunity for anybody that's willing to put your neck on the line. Go buy a piece of property right now as close to the center of your town as you possibly can get. Run the power, build your own depot charging thing, and make it a subscription, a membership, put a roof over the tops of those plumbing and HVAC and electrical vans don't have snow sitting on their ladder racks. Like, there's a huge opportunity to do that. And to address your question, are we going to have to change our habits? Yeah, absolutely. We're going to have to change. And we probably don't even know how much that's going to have to change. At least if we go the same route we're going now with just battery-powered EV vehicles. Like, we know they got to be charged. They're going to get better, obviously, but, like, at what point and for, how long do we have to wait until we're there,
Well, I have a 3/4 ton high roof Sprinter, and it's full of shelving, full of tools, full of refrigerant cylinders. I wouldn't say I'm heavy with how much stuff I have, but I'm right up there, and I can achieve over 300 miles easily per tank of diesel, right? So like that's kind of like a once a week fill up for me. Running calls in town. Sometimes I might need to do like maybe 80 miles in a day would be like a long day, like return trip home, right?
Okay.
But
You're parking you're not parking at your house, are you?
I am. See, that's the difference that we need to figure out. Like, there's depot charging, which might be great for if you return the vehicle to your employer, or if you're like a delivery type service or whatever, but like a lot of us in my area will all take our vehicles home. So how are we going to charge at home? I live near a major, I would consider it like a large suburbia, but there's mostly strata, so it's townhouses and condos. So townhouses where I live, there's no driveways, so it's not like I can park my overhyped vehicle on a driveway and not in my carport. Like there's no driveway to park it in. Or if you live in a condo, it's all underground parking. So some of the downtown technicians might have specific vehicles that they can park in parking garages, in which case it could probably charge at their strata, but it doesn't work for my application.
Those exist right now, as you're saying. So it doesn't matter if they're driving a gas, diesel, or electric. If the vehicle's too large and there's no place to park it, there's no place to park it. It doesn't matter what
Correct.
is power in the vehicle at all, like literally. Mm-hmm. So then I wonder how that, like, going back to, are we going to have to change things? Look, I think that there's also, I know this sounds like I'm so pro EV. I'm not trying to sound that way. I don't mean that when I say this. I think we have gotten so used to technicians driving and parking at home. Maybe that just has to change. Like, I'm not saying it's okay. I'm just saying, in general, maybe that's over when we start having to plug vehicles in. Because of all the reasons we talked about in the last episode, you talk about it now, Jason. Like, Andy, all of your guys park their vehicles at home. Two of the three live in, like a
complex.
Complex. They don't. They don't have the opportunity, at least currently, to charge. At least they can park though. So they have a slot. They have a stall in a parking lot. I would imagine as this comes online. Can you imagine how much it's gonna take to incentivize rental property owners to put in chargers?
EV charger.
Think about that. About that. Well, you can barely get them to upgrade their water heater.
Right. That's it, and that's. Yeah, that's a huge part of it. You look at all the townhouses and duplexes and triplexes that are around. I mean, every city's full of them. That are multifamily rental properties that are maybe a little on the level of, they might be a little bit run down, right?
Older properties.
They probably are running on a
where I live, they're building them every day though. They're building them every day here though. It's crazy.
Oh, they are.
If you're going to do depot. If you're going to do depot charging, though, like, I think you have the same problem at most business models for, like, our industry. Like, for instance, my employer, we have about 20 trucks on the road. We have a little shop with a warehouse and an office space built out. There's probably 8 parking stalls. So, like, where are the other 16 vehicles that we have in the fleet going to park at night if we do make a mandate that everyone has to return to base, So
planning starts now, then.
I think so, yeah. But, like, all that's going to cost money, and it's going to increase the cost of our tickets as well, too. It's interesting to see what's going to change. But I don't think that the solution is going to be, like, return to base at the end of the day and everyone's going to drive their trucks back to Andy's house and his wife won't be able to get out of her garage and stuff like that, right? I think there's there's other opportunities where I believe there's already happening, and I don't know about your guys' area, but, like, where I live, there's a lot of the gas stations are starting to turn over to have EV charging stations where you used to park to go into the convenience store. There's EV charging stations there now, and from my little experience on our road trip we did in the summer, like, there's some definitely better ones, some better than others, that's for sure, in terms of how much power they can output and how quickly you can charge your battery. It'll be interesting to see how, I don't know how much more technology can change to ram that much power into a battery that quickly without it being unsafe, but we'll see. There's only a small portion of vehicles that I see driving around that are strictly EV currently, but if you were to mandate that they're all electric vehicles, things would go off the rails pretty quick where I live. I mean, even just getting out of town and going out to the mountains for the weekend and you have gas, you stop at that last gas station before you hit the mountains on the weekend, especially a long weekend in the summertime. You're waiting 20 minutes to get fuel, never mind and it only takes, 2 to 5 minutes to fill up your tank, as opposed to an EV charging
30.
station where if you wanted to get 80% charge rate on a decent charger, you might be there for 30, 40 minutes, right?
Yeah, absolutely. There's no doubt about that. People are going to use that too as an argument against it.
Yeah.
I don't love the idea at all. I don't. My motivation of going, and I said it before, so I won't spend a lot of time on it, is just to not stop at the gas station, right? But if you look at these ratings, and if they hold true for even like 75%, let's say you lose 25% capacity because of we're loading these things down pretty well, these vans, and also cold weather. Let's say you lose 25% off the top. And that e-Sprinter, you're still looking at like 220 miles to a charge. That's days worth of driving in most cases. It just is.
Yeah.
And somebody will get you, I drive 400 miles. I'm like, well, then you don't get paid to do anything but drive, apparently, because that's like the worst business model ever, So, yeah, are people going to like to wait for it? I don't know. I think you brought up a good point in your email, too, is like, how is it going to be when you show up to a station? Let's say they continue to look and operate like a gas station, like we're used to, where you can wait just a few minutes, and that's already aggravating to get to a pump. Like, how are you going to feel when you're waiting as you see the person just plugging in their vehicle, right? And you're like, that's the one you got to wait for. That's the one I got in line for. Now I got to wait. Like, I don't know if that's going to be the case. Like you said, if you can do it safely, can they speed up the charging? These DC fast chargers, that level 3 charger, those things, they're already charging certain vehicles, depending on their platform, in like 20 minutes, 20 to 30. I don't know that, like, these vans have basically kind of the same battery system. They might be physically larger, but I don't know that they could charge any fast. Probably worse, actually. They're probably not even as good.
Well, and I was just looking at something. So, because I was thinking that same thing. Like, well, how does that work? Like overnight on like the 110 volt charger, does that do it? Can you charge up? And it says that this article from, who the heck is it? NRDC. Not sure who that is. Mentioned that a level 1 charger, so 110 volt, plugs into a 20 amp outlet, says that a typical EV battery or car system would take between 40 and 50 hours to charge from empty to full. Jesus. On a level 1.
40 and 50 hours?
Yep.
So it's totally worthless at that point.
Well, yeah. I mean, if on the same token, it says the U.S. car driver averages 31 miles a day. So if you can go 250, then you're topping off, right? You show up, you come home from work, you park the car, you plug in, and you need to make up 25%.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. So that's going to be whatever, 25%. So, 10 hours, let's say. So by morning, it's charged up.
I've had guys that had to call in because it's a snow day, and they're like, you know what? There's just too much snow. I'm out. I got to call in sick today. I can't get out of my driveway. So maybe we got to call in like a charge day. So I call up Andy. Hey, sorry, Andy, I can't make it to the job today. It's Wednesday morning. Truck's not charged yet. I'll see you tomorrow. So
yeah.
Well, there's a lot that's going to come from that. Like, if you're having to top off every single day, that means that you're on top of it. What happens if you're not?
Yep. Well, so then,
or you're on call.
Yeah. Well, you go to the level 2 charger. So and I don't know, there may be other different categories and whatnot inside of these.
It's 1, 2. Yeah, basically the 2 is the professionally installed 240 volt. Yeah,
240 volt.
Yep. Yeah. So this says 240 volt should charge from empty in somewhere between 4 to 10 hours. Public level 2 charging stations are common at locations where drivers need to park, like workplaces, commercial parking lots. And then you have high speeds, the level 3 chargers that are DCFS or DCFC chargers, direct current fast chargers, can charge your EV from empty to 80% in as little as 20 minutes. Yeah. So, I mean, there's options. I mean, that would be a massive pain in the butt. I think we can all agree on that if you're out running service calls, or, I got 8 trips to the supply house today because we're deep in it, and this commercial building's down and I got to keep running for parts, that would suck to be able to get somewhere halfway through the day or whatever and be like, I guess I'm sitting here for 40 minutes or 25 minutes while we top off the van.
Well, but see, the thing is I think that we just don't think of this at all when we're talking about gas, because we're so used to just having to go to the pump, fill it up. Diesel, gasoline, doesn't matter, right? Like that just, it's so automatic.
It's just going to be more frequent.
We want to talk about how range anxiety and how this could be inconvenient and how we might have to call in. Like, look, these vehicles aren't running 24 hours a day. And everybody we know in this industry, unless there's some crazy business model out there that I haven't heard of, but if you are plumbing, heating, whatever, all these contractors that are driving the vehicles we're talking about, they're not handing the keys to the next person working a second shift, right? Sure. They're literally parking these things every day. So I think that the range thing I think the qualification for range has to meet your daily demand. I really do think that that's it. I don't think that charging it every day is like, oh my God, I can't believe you have to charge it every day. Well, like, I don't know. You probably charge your cell phone literally every single day, unless you're
multiple times.
Unless you're completely psychotic serial killer that like waits till it's at 1% and then plugs it in. I don't want to know you. I don't want to know that about you. But like your vehicle is not running 24 hours a day. So this whole I'm gonna run out in the middle of it comes down to like personal responsibility too. Like, and then also let's not forget the telematics we use that term because Ford put it out there, I think, but like these systems are always connected, whether you're driving down the road or not. Your vehicle is right now, whether you have access to it or not. They know exactly everything about your vehicle. Like OnStar's been around forever to tell you when you need an oil change. You think that every vehicle out there, if you bought it within the last 10 years, can't do that? Of course it can. So like you start making these electric, and it just comes down to like like you talked, Jay, and we bring it up. I bring it up the 10th time already. I'm sorry, but like change your habits. That's what I'm talking about. You're just gonna have to now we're gonna have to start thinking again. Like we're gonna be like,
if there's one thing in my life that I've learned is the general populace doesn't really think all that.
No, you're 100%. That's why I'm harping on it right now.
I know. Here's a quick story. So two falls ago, like we had a early November snowfall. So like where I live like north of Seattle in Vancouver. So like not really cold. Cold weather isn't typical. Lots of snow isn't typical. But we had this like flash freeze in November. We had snow and it was like -5 Celsius. So like high 20s, I guess, right? And oh my gosh, the world ended. I'm serious. I was on call. I started at 3:00 downtown. And then it was like noon. I'm like, you know what? I'm still on call. I need to go. I phoned the office. I'm like, I'm going to sleep. I'm going home. And it just started snowing at noon, 1:00 in the afternoon. And by the rush hour to go home, roads were shut. So I have a huge river, the Fraser River, that runs through all the Fraser Valley and the Lower Mainland where all the towns are. So like there's bridges everywhere, but all the bridges were closed because of spun out vehicles was the first problem, because everyone's like, oh my gosh, there's snow in BC in November. I don't have snow tires, A, to begin with, or B, if I do, they're not on my vehicle yet. Right. So nobody could travel on the roads was the first problem. But then the second problem was it was compounded because all the EV drivers who are used to their typical driving habits, Eric, where it's like, hey, it's like 30 miles to my door, return trip.
Yeah, now they're
well,
stuck.
Guess what? It's minus. Yeah, they had no power. There was dead EVs everywhere. 911 was plugged because people didn't even have, like, who are diabetics didn't have insulin, and they're stuck in traffic for so long. It took a lot of my guys I work with over 10 hours to get home that day, which a typical rush hour bad day with an accident might have been like an hour and a half. People were losing their mind. Right. They weren't home till the following day. It was nuts.
And admittedly, I wasn't even thinking in those scenarios. Don't get me wrong. I also, in my defense, if I care to even try to claim one, is that where I live, that doesn't happen, Jay. Like if it
Yeah,
snows,
it's unique to me for sure.
we're prepared for it, right? So like
Yeah.
it's less of a concern for me, although it is like it's going to add on to the commute.
Oh,
There's
yeah.
no doubt about that. I mean, I'm not an idiot. I'm not going to deny that a snowstorm sudden and out of kind of season, although November wouldn't be out of season for us, but like let's say prior to Halloween, if that happens in Minnesota, it's going to ruin everybody's day and commute. But it's not going to take 10 hours. No freaking way. It's not even I mean, no, I can't even think of a scenario in my lifetime that would have even been close to the situation here in Minnesota. But you're right. It's a reality.
We had one here 2 weeks ago that the portion of the interstate was closed for like 4.5 hours because a whole kind of a freak snowstorm coming out of Bozeman, and they weren't ready to plow the roads. Now, granted, this doesn't have anything to do with EVs specifically, but think along that line. If you're in your gas-powered vehicle and you're just sitting there idling to keep your vehicle warm, and what the reasoning was is there was like 14 semi-trucks that got stuck on the pass.
Yeah.
Right? They spun out, lost traction, and there they are. They're just basically sitting in the middle of the road. And everyone behind it now can't move until the road's cleared, or they're towed over into the the driving lane. And so it basically plugged the interstate up there. And I think of that and go, well, how does an EV maintain heat? Well, with an electric heater. I mean, what do you do in that scenario? I mean, there's places in Montana where you're 100 miles between fuel stops, or pushing on it. I mean, that's not the norm. I mean, but Canada's a very similar position. You get up there in the North Country, and I mean, I don't know. You're right though. It is a habit change that you can't go, well, hey, I'm going to go take this road trip and expect to be there in 8 hours if I've got to stop 3 times to charge.
Yeah, and I don't know if it's like, I'm not going to put like the government controlling us on what we can and cannot do on this whole topic.
More
where some people, no, I know some people want to go there though. They do. I've had that conversation very recently. Yeah. But I'll pose another scenario in regards to the road closure on the pass and the 100 miles between towns. And let's say both those towns have ample opportunity to charge. Let's just say they do, but there's nothing in between. Look, I'm not taking my existing transit off-road because it's not an off-road vehicle. Right. I'm not taking my Tesla Model 3 I'm renting in Utah next week off-road because it's not an off-road vehicle. Maybe we have to sit back and go, what vehicles belong where? Do we take the electric vehicle to that very remote place where something like this could happen? Or do we have to say, no, that's a spot that only, combustion engine cars vehicles. Yeah. Yep. Look, it goes back to how do we change like how we look at all this. We're not talking about those things, or we're not thinking about those things because we've never had to before.
Yep.
Andy had a good one that I didn't really think of that made me go, on the last one you guys talked about, where it's like maybe when you go to the customer's house, whether it be a business or a residential house, it's like, hey, I'm going to plug in here and, we're going to track what it costs per kilowatt and I'm going to pay back either equal or maybe whatever there's like I'm going to give you $20 plus whatever energy I use, right? That's a good solution to that problem too, because you're parked there for a boiler repair or whatever it might be, right?
And I had somebody write in that was all fired up about that, and I appreciate him writing in. But I looked at that and I went, well, that would be really easy to do, right? Somebody's going to come up with an app.
Oh, it already exists.
And a metering device where you could plug in and be like, hey, I'm going to run my clock. I'm at Mrs. Jones. Mrs. Jones, here I am. Well, but it doesn't exist in the vehicle in terms of billing, and so you would have to be able to yes, you can say, okay, hey, between these hours, I took on this many kilowatts of power, but you could go in and say, okay, here it is. Our charge rate is, our standard charge, what we pay back rate is, 10 cents a kilowatt. thanks for the huff up, whatever, and got me topped off, and I'm on to the next call. So, but if you look at that,
all this is it's software, though. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
That's what I'm saying. But somebody will have an app that every homeowner will have, that you'll be like, oh, hey, I plugged in, and now the company's going to Venmo you $11.
Yeah.
Or
and it's
$6
going to be treated just
whatever.
like mileage reimbursement or
Yeah.
right. And I think they'll just
or it
treat
comes
it
off
just
the
like
bill.
mileage reimbursement, or would be like a going rate. You
Sure.
know, like
Yeah.
in the U.S., Jay, like if you're an employee and you're driving for your company for whatever, and you get reimbursed for mileage, there's just a standard federal rate, right? It's
Right.
It's expensive for the employer technically, but it's way cheaper than paying for a vehicle, right? So, like, it's just gonna go that route. It's gotta, and the beauty of that is it's software. So, like Andy, like you said, like it's not in the billing side of it. It's just probably a matter of like
It's a matter of doing it. Yeah.
wireframing that into that, so it's just part of it, And
Right.
and is it feasible? Like you can make the argument, well, you can't just plug into them. Like, you know what?
you
Well,
can.
this might have to be the way things are done for a while,
Right.
Until we figure this out.
It's part of the terms, maybe.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Maybe it's part of your terms for the work that you're doing. Like we will be permitted to plug in at a level 2 rate if it's available or whatever it might be. And I mean, there's a lot of homes that don't have that. But I mean, again, we're not talking about needing that technology installed tomorrow. Yeah. We have a whole vehicle life cycle before that becomes a reality. So that's a whole decade plus
there's so much
to change
business.
people's driving habits, to get the technology installed, to have the software, to figure it all
There's
out.
so
Right?
much business opportunity here too, though. Think about these
huge.
neighborhoods that have, like these neighborhoods, these planned communities that are, every fourth house is the same, and they have a pool and they have their little park, and it's all within their. You don't even have to gate these things off. Some of them are gated, but a lot of you could drive around all of North America, and in every state you can find these communities. They're being built.
Yeah.
They're no more than 20 years old as it is anyway, right?
Yeah.
What if instead of putting a pool in or a park, or in addition to, they start putting up charging depots in these neighborhoods that are within a couple blocks of one of the houses anyway? That's just another incentive for for people to make money and selling homes, building neighborhoods, communities, things like that. Like I brought up the depot, like go to your town, buy Andy, maybe you and I need to do this, like seriously. Roof over the top, pavilion style.
Yeah.
Car wash that'll take on vans right over there. Now we're selling car washes at $35 a pop. Just drive through. We'll wash your plumbing
Go
van.
pick your car up. Yep.
Well, yeah, we'll do it while it's charging. You're like, we'll find the right time to do it. It's going to be on the list. Then we'll plug it back in, and you'll be charged when you show up, and washed,
And wash.
and no
charge
snow
wash.
over the top of it. Look, there's all kinds of opportunities here for this.
Yep.
What if you have what if your complex also offers tire replacements?
Yeah.
And vehicle maintenance, and I'm thinking,
Well,
like seriously,
What if there's a way, like we're all used to using batteries in our daily like tasks as tradespeople, but like what if there's a way that I could slide out like a 5 kilowatt battery
Make a
off the side
modular?
of my vehicle, or maybe a machine does it for me? Yeah, where maybe that doesn't work because there's different brands of vehicles, but maybe there's like an ability to add like a universal modular battery bank, and it's just part of your shelving where it's in the side, and you can slide in and out maybe 5 kilowatt battery banks, and it's like a gas station. You just pull out one from the rental service or the leasing company, and you put in a freshly charged one, and then it instantly starts charging for the next one. And again, on an app, you can see in town where there's some modules to swing by, and you can reserve them to come pick them up, and you're in and out in the same amount of time it takes you to pump gas or
that's
diesel.
Easily the most interesting concept that has been brought up in all of these conversations I've had about this subject. You brought up in your email, Jay. I think it's a fascinating idea.
have you guys seen that?
I love it.
There's I don't know what country it is. I don't know if it's China or Thailand or something like that, but they're taxi cabs or EVs, and they have a battery swap. So you basically drive the taxi cab up onto this little ramp. The machine comes up, pops the battery out the bottom, slides it over, and snaps a new one in the bottom, and off they go. And they got a fresh battery, so the taxi cab doesn't have to stop. And I'm like,
that's exactly what you're talking about, Jay, right? Where like you go to your brand of station that does this, and you just pay a flat fee for it.
Yeah.
Yeah, that also allows like the integration of solar PV to like offset the
Hugely,
the
huge.
chart. Like because these things you have a warehouse full of them basically at that point, right?
Right.
And you're charging every one of the. Can you imagine the heat the cooling they would need for that warehouse, Jay? Like think about that. Like there's business here, man.
Some massive.
But
Well,
then
you can build it into like city generation stations where they're taking that heat and they're using it for a process, right?
District
like we
heating.
have, like it's district heating. There you go,
Absolutely.
exactly, right?
There's just a lot here. I think it's fascinating. Like I said, I know it sounds like I'm super pro. I'm like pro electric van for like just super selfish reasons, but I think that we're barely even scratching the surface in our like lay term, conversations about like, oh, what if this, what if that, like, I'd really love to talk with somebody that is in this industry too, and I'd really like to talk to somebody to help me figure out how to build one of these depot charging station things. I think that's going to be my legacy. I'm going to leave my kids this business and be like, here you go.
Yeah.
On plumbing, heating, and EV charging.
Exactly.
There you go.
Oh, that'd be cool. Well, what else? What do you think?
I mean, I'm already spoiled. Like my work vehicle, it's 20,000 kilometers between services, so I only need to take it in once a year. But that all has a cost to it. But like the best part about a truly EV without hybrid is just the fact that your maintenance intervals are extended and the cost for maintenance is reduced as well, right?
Yeah, there's not a lot of maintenance to be done on electric motors. There's not really anything you can do to them, You're going to have your standard wear parts, which apparently are reportedly higher rate of replacement for like tires. But does that come down to driving habits too? Like people now can go 0 to 60 in like 3 seconds in some of these vehicles, and so they do. Well, that doesn't mean the tires are going to like perform and hold up to the same rate as they were with a lower performance vehicle either,
Right.
And he's going to have the admin version of the app on his phone, and he's going to be reducing the acceleration rate and stuff like that and top speeds. Like, I mean,
30,
you could do that too, I'm sure,
max,
right?
boys. Sorry.
We gotta save some KWs.
That's right.
That's right.
It's interesting. At the very least, go ahead, Andy.
I was going to say no 4-barrel carbs anymore.
Oh God. Well, maybe these vehicles, we haven't even really got into it because we don't have real true experience with it, but maybe these vehicles will have less on the lines of the maintenance, but just their longevity and parts and stuff. Like, look, there's like barely the transmission doesn't exist in the same way that it does now with these vehicles, right?
Sure.
And, hydrostatic drives and stuff like that. Like these vehicles, there's a lot of moving pieces. They are very reliable. Like, look, you don't hear of many Transit and Sprinter owners that are like, oh, we can only get 20,000 miles or 50,000. I mean, these things last basically the same as any passenger vehicle, right?
They go.
Yeah.
But you're starting to eliminate some of that stuff with these electric vehicles too. So it's interesting. I'd be interested to see how they start to change feature options, to be honest with you. You look at that, what's the I'm going to screen share real quick. That PDF we used in the last one, Andy, the comparison of the models that Sprinter had on their website. And so it compares the two models of the e-Sprinter to the Ford e-Transit, the Bright Drop. There's two models of that Bright Drop. That Bright Drop is a GM vehicle, Jason. And it's like a giant futuristic bread truck. It's actually, in my opinion, kind of
cool looking.
It's kind of cool looking, personally. That's my thought. And then you've got the Rivian, which is, I don't know, it's probably the same there with Amazon, but Amazon has bought like a boatload of these Rivian electric vans here in North America, or in United States. Sorry, I'm sure it's that way in Canada too, but. more and more of the vehicles we see, at least in the city center, are these Rivians, and they're huge as well. Just giant vans. But like they have some pretty, like, for the first time you saw in these style vans, the Sprinter style van, like they have a roll up door on the back, or they have
That's cool.
like a different automatic setting on their side doors and stuff like that, and they're like lower to the ground, so you give up like ground clearance, but now you've got like ergonomics, like better to get in and out of and stuff like that. So like I think this is spurring like redesign and like paying closer attention to how the vehicle's used and making it more efficient, because with the Transit and the Sprinter, all they did is they took the engine out and put batteries in it. Like, let's be honest, the vehicle's not any different.
Yeah.
You know?
Right.
If we can get 250 miles like of usable range, I think we're laughing. You know what I mean? Like we're well into the good on that one, right? All those numbers up there, they're all 270s, 280s, and those are the fancy numbers they put on the sheet of the cell sheet or whatever, right? But like, if we can get 200, 250 miles on a charge, like, I think we're laughing. So even if you say, well, Andy only wants his guys to charge to 90% or 80% to save battery life too, I mean, you're still in the, like, what, 175 to 200 mile range if your battery's capable of 250? Like, that's beautiful.
Yeah.
Beautiful.
Multiple days, most likely, especially if you're working within the, the city limits, let's call it, in most major metropolitan areas. That's Twin Cities Metro. If you had 170, 180 mile range in a normal service environment where you're doing residential, commercial service, plumbing, HVAC, electrical, if you're driving 100 miles in a day, it's because your boss allows you to park at home and you live in a rural area. Put it that way. I'm just going to lay that. That's the line in the sand I'm going to draw. You don't need 100 miles in a day. You just don't. Unless your business is structured otherwise. But they could, even if you drive that much now, like I said, it's probably because you park it at home and your home is 30 miles away. Well, that's 60 miles in a day just driving to the city and your house, right?
Yeah.
So habit change. We're going to run things differently. It's just a fact. I'm not saying it's good or bad. It's easy for me to say, I'm going to park the damn thing in my shop every day. I don't care. I'm driving to my house and parking it here. I can plug it in if I need to.
Yep.
So are we going to go to like Mad Max era one day? Because, the market, hold on, hear me out. Like the market's going to dictate and consumer habits are going to change to EVs, whether I think we want that to happen or not. That's what's going to happen, right? So what about your old cars? And when I say old cars, maybe your 2000 Ford Explorer or whatever it might be, but like, all the muscle car people out there, what are you going to do to run your vehicle? I'm a motorcycle guy. I love my motorcycle. You can give me an EV motorcycle. I think that'd be really cool. But I want to crank the throttle when I got the clutch in. I want to hear it go vroom vroom. Yeah. You know what I mean?
You could.
So like, it'll be interesting to see as we get rid of like gas stations and then EV stations come on board. Like, what are we going to do for fuel for like older vehicles that still exist, or even like electric vehicles, or for hobby enthusiasts who have generators or whatever it might be. It's more than just EVs too that will change as the market changes. It'll be less fuel for things that need fuel. So I just hope I can still have my motorcycle, and I know the car people out there are going to still want to run their old cars for sure.
I like to fish, and I don't see any electric boats yet, but we'll see.
Well, they've had smaller little fractional horsepower guys out there for years.
Yeah, no, I know that, but I mean, as far as like on the scale, which even just a recreational angler is using,
I don't see
boat,
that.
Your walleye boat, that kind of thing.
Yeah, there's no barrier to that at all. I mean, that's throw a DC motor on top of your drive shaft and batteries in the bottom of the boat. Yeah, the boat gets heavier, but I don't know. You take 400 pounds off the back and, well. Yeah.
Yeah, water and electricity.
No, Andy's right. I'm not
just
saying.
I'm
just saying, Andy. Like I just hope that they figure that out. I'm not saying your idea.
Can you imagine though?
I agree.
Can you imagine having a nearly silent Ranger bass boat? 300 horse.
Yeah,
on the back and having it basically not make much for noise except prop wash.
I'd imagine that the going like a 200 horsepower electric motor system for like a drive system for a boat is going to be pretty expensive though. Like, not that it's not expensive now, just the like just having a motor that can do that gas, however it's powered up, like it's expensive to build that.
Right.
And then at performance levels, it gets even obviously more costly.
Right.
Most people's boating habits too are not using it daily. So you're going to use your boat on the weekend, and then maybe you're busy and you don't use it for a month. So then what does that do to your battery and just sitting there? And
Well, there's your takeout modules, right? So you roll up in the Tesla with the boat on the back,
right?
You pull the module out, and you stick it after you've parked the boat or the car. Pull the module out, throw it in the boat, take the boat out for a hot lap, come back, put the module back in the car, and away you go.
Boy, we're. Okay,
I just figured it all out.
All right. And I got to bring it up because it's only been mentioned, but it's not been discussed, and we don't have to get into it. But at the end of the day, I think this move to EV is really going to spur this hybrid design for these vehicles too. And like Jay, you opened up the conversation how Canada is basically through, I don't know, communism or something, mandating these changes. We need these cargo vehicles, at least in the interim, to be hybrid. Like I've said many times before, I've said it when we weren't even talking about EV vehicles. If I could get 30, 40, 50 miles in a day in a hybrid mode, I would just be like, oh man,
ecstatic.
That'd be so awesome.
Yeah.
I think that would be just fantastic.
Yep.
And if you could get 100 miles, wow, now you've got the best of both worlds, where we've got performance, but we've got, the EV side it does save money. It does save on emissions when it comes to like the vehicle tailpipe emissions, right? So, yeah, I don't know. It's interesting.
Yeah.
I think we got to wrap it up though. We're almost at 50 minutes.
Yeah.
And
Jay's
we're just
got to go to work.
Jay's got to go to work. The rest of us, we ain't working. We ain't working today.
Not today.
We'll see. I should go to work, I guess.
Maybe you got to call in, no charge.
Call in, no charge. Good.
That's right. And the beauty is, by the time the boss hears this podcast, I would have already called in sick and I've been back to work. So it's like
a time warp.
Yeah.
You just call in after a long weekend as undercharged, right?
I need to recharge. Look, I need to recharge.
I like that.
It's Monday.
That's right.
Gonna need a couple of days.
Well, Jason Norman, we can find you as HVAC Jay. What is your actual? It's HVAC Jay 604. Is that what it is?
I think it's HVAC _J604, but you'll find me without whatever. I'm out there. You'll see me, or you won't.
On the socials.
Or you will.
You spend most of your time on the Instagram.
Yeah, I'm for this stuff. Yeah, it's all on Instagram.
Stuff.
Yeah, I
You've
dabbled with
Feet Finder.
Well, I dabbled with LinkedIn years ago. No. I dabbled in LinkedIn years ago, and then I kind of just let that account go dead because it's just recruiting people harassing you all the time for me. So it was just
my LinkedIn
annoying.
states that I'm very good at knee noises, and I have an endorsement for it, and just stupid stuff like that because I just don't think LinkedIn is. Anyway, I digress. I always digress, though, don't I? All right. Anything to add to that, boys? Either one of you?
No.
Nope. That's it.
Nope.
Yeah.
I got to end it
coming
just
on
like that.
short notice too.
Yeah.
That's right.
It
EV
is.
solution is modular batteries.
Modular batteries and business opportunities.
That's right. Yeah.
If you guys, if you're listening to this and you don't jump on the idea of like, if you're entrepreneurial and you don't start thinking about how this could actually make you tons of money, then look, I tried. Don't blame me. Depot charging with car washes, tire change, snacks.
Right.
We'll give them snacks too.
Snacks, beef
Hot
sticks.
breakfast, beef sticks.
Yeah.
Telling you. All right, guys. Andy, how can they get a hold of us? How can they talk to us about this topic?
Well, you can do just like Jay did. You can send us an email at maketradesgreatagain@gmail.com. You can Instagram us, DM Eric at Mechanical Hub and get me at Mick_Plum. You can listen to us on basically every single possible thing out there.
Yep.
You can download this if you want. Maybe maybe you should get it everywhere.
We're on Feet Finder now.
We're on Feet Finder, yeah.
Yeah, we stream there too.
That's right. Somebody's gonna do it.
All right. I'm going to hit stop before we hit the actual 15-minute mark, guys.
All right.
Bye.
Thanks, Jay.